Peter, good morning.
Good morning. Today is Sunday, and it is
June
June 4th,
4th.
2023. Our topic today is evolution of self care. Evolution of self care. And so let's begin with an opening affirmative prayer. So if you'd like to join me by just being still or closing your eyes, and let's know that each life here is a creation of the divine. It is a divine creation through evolution, and each new being is an expression of the divine. So we remember that when we think of how we care for ourselves, both how we care for ourselves emotionally and how we take care of ourselves. And remember that we are the daughter or son of God, and therefore deserve to be treated well, not driven like a horse, not pushed, not used, but valued. And so we take care of that self to have the best life here on earth, to be the best that we can be, and not struggle, punish uh, ourselves, but let ourselves be that divine expression, beloved of God and beloved of life, so that we deserve good care, we deserve rest, we deserve recreation, recreation, as we would our own beloved child. So we keep that in mind, we give thanks for the reminder, we release, and together we say,
And so it is.
so it is. So I was reminded this morning that most of us here, as we're growing up, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And certainly children need to learn that because they can be pretty mean to each other. And so that's an important one to learn, do unto others. But our talk today is about do unto self. Do unto self as well as you treat others. Treat yourself as well as you treat others, because we often tend to, especially many of us who are helpers in the world, we are caregivers, we are practitioners of this teaching, and so we love to help others heal and do well in their life, and yet sometimes we can do it to the point that we quit thinking about taking care of ourselves. So it's interesting that this topic came along with recommendations. And one of the first quotes I have is Pema Chodron. You know, she's a Buddhist monk. And she says, be kinder to yourself, and then let your kindness flood the world.
Hmm.
Because if you're not kind to yourself, you won't have that overflow of kindness to give others. And so that is the job. That is the job, to treat ourselves well enough that we can be kind to others. If you've ever known a person, or maybe had as a parent, a very driven person who is working hard for the family, they're doing it all for the family. What do we? Oh,
Yeah.
don't distract me.
Yeah. Driven,
to
driving hard. Yeah. Yeah.
that sometimes then that does not leave you with the emotional resources, actually, even to give to the family, much less to yourself. But we need to remember that we need to care for us. That means with rest, as I said in the prayer, with rest, with recreation, with taking care of oneself physically, eating right, and moving right as well as you can move. And it's very, very important, and we don't hear very much about that.
I was thinking about the title of it, Evolution of Self-Care, and I was one,
Evolution.
and it made me wonder, has your self-care evolved? Is the way you take care of yourself, is it an evolving process that includes you and your best, or is your recreation and is your taking care of yourself just another job that you have to do? And I was thinking about some of the things that we do very often to recreate or recreate. really doesn't have much to do with supporting us. That is, sometimes what I think happens, and I know it's happened for us, is we'll watch a movie that isn't a very good movie because we're just basically wanting a time filler, a relaxation time filler, as opposed to what could I do that would fill me up. Instead, we fill up our time. Some of us actually don't have a self-support program. What we have is that we have time set aside for that, and we don't know what to do with that. And so what I think happens is very often it's just another job to do that we don't feel very good about, as opposed to involving ourselves in the evolving ourselves into the process. I'm reminded of, in particularly, of bicycling. For many, many years, I bicycled because it just felt so good, because I loved the feeling of the air, and I loved how fast I could go, and I loved the sense of balance that came with it.
How quickly you could get away.
Oh yeah, and then somewhere along the line, I got a watch, which told me how fast I was going, how long I had gone fast, that I had beat another time that I had done before, or I wasn't quite up to par this time. And what I noticed without thinking about it is my self-care became a job, an expectation, something I needed to do well, or it would be another thing during the day that I had to manage that didn't go as well as I'd like for it to have gone. If you're managing your self-care and evaluating it and asking yourself, is this taking care of me or not? And you're not actually engaged in it, you're not actually enjoying it, maybe that's not self-care. And so I'm asking you, and I'm asking myself as well, every time I turn the TV on, is this part of my self-care or is it an escape? Am I using the things around me, or are they using me? And how do we do that? So I think the first step in self-care is to put yourself first in this care. And secondly, how much did I get out of it? Did I do it well? Did I do it as good as I should have done it? Should I have done more of it? Should I have done it longer? All of those shoulds disrupt the self-care, and they take away from it. It's no longer self-care. It's just, like I said, another part-time job, getting in shape.
Yeah, all those you can drive yourself to do. And I was thinking of my father, and he was taught, of course, by his childhood, by what he saw his father do. And he grew up on a farm. My grandfather was a very successful wheat farmer until the Great Dust Bowl, and they were in Oklahoma. And so, what my father learned as a child was to work hard all the time.
All the time,
That's what
yeah.
you did on the farm. And so he did that also his whole life. And he did it for the family. He was doing it for the family. And we had lots of nice things, including a swimming pool when nobody else did, and nice cars to drive and all that. But what we didn't have is we didn't have my father's presence, because he would be out working till midnight. And that working might be in the garage, or it might be behind the house or something like that, but he wasn't with us. We didn't get to spend that much pleasurable time with him. And I think the right thing would have been to balance life, because he didn't need to work that hard. And so balance is a very important thing. You don't want to spend all of your time indulging yourself, but it's very important to have a balance. And someone in one of my quotes here has a beautiful way of saying that, and it is from Karen Walrond, Walrond, from the Light Maker's Manifesto. And she says, according to the positive psychology research of the Whole Being Institute, people who thrive take care of themselves in 5 ways. They focus on cultivating spirituality in their lives by ensuring that they're leading meaningful lives and mindfully savoring the present. They take care of their physical bodies, that's number 2, especially for the purpose of tapping into the connection between their minds and their bodies. They are intentional about intellectual stimulation, I'm up to 3, by engaging in deep learning and remaining open to new experiences. And they nurture constructive relationships, both with themselves and with others. And finally, they're not afraid of their emotions. They don't deny or suppress their feelings, but are mindful of them. So I think those are 5 areas that we could examine for our own lives and say, how am I doing with those? I know that obviously we're all here doing the first one because, we know how important our spiritual education and practice is. But the first part of that is make sure that they're leading a meaningful life. And I think I could speak for all of you because I know things that you do in your life, that it's important that you have goals and things you're working towards, and that includes other people. And you have a meaningful life because you're doing meaningful things.
Right. So if we were to list that, if you were to list all of those positives and call it your job description, that would be one way. But what I'd like to do is to have you list all of those things that you could do, and then above that, cross out job description and put play description. And the question is, how could you do all of these things and play, which changes the whole context of it from, yes, another thing that's got to get done, another thing off my to-do list.
Thou shalt not should on
I did
thyself.
it well. But what she's really inviting you to do is to immerse yourself in these different things, your spirituality and in your materialization of the world around you. But I'm suggesting that you do it in a playful way, that you have fun with it, that you not take yourself so seriously.
Absolutely.
And if we could do that, if we can have fun with it, we've changed the whole way in which we are in the world. And I don't think we need to be in the world as a job. We need to be in the world in relationship to it. How do we dance with it? I know when I've applied for jobs and I've looked at the job description, it's usually 2 paragraphs long and at the end, and then other things as required. And if I had to take a new job on the basis of the job description, I would try not to ever have to work again. But if I were to go to the place I was working and say, this is the job description, now how does it actually work? I would find out it's really all about the relationships. It's about how I relate to the task, how I relate to the individuals that I participate with, how I feel about relating to that, how I engage and connect with all of that. That's really where the meat is. It's not in the description. So what I'm suggesting is that in our spirituality, you don't say, I hope this is going to be a good meditation, or that was a really good meditation. Because when you've done that, you've gone from meditating to evaluating. And when you're in that evaluation state, it's very easy to evaluate everything and to actually have nothing. I often joke about the reason critics get a good deal of money is because they're not ever there enjoying the thing. They're there criticizing it. They're there judging it. They can't engage. And if you're not going to be able to engage with life, make sure you're getting well paid for that job. And so, but I think it's really important, if we can, to presence ourselves in a sense of playfulness.
Yes, and that reminds me, and I've said it before recently, but it bears repeating. Jill Bolte Taylor, whose newest book is Whole Brain Living, says that the way, and she used to be a research scientist at Harvard University, and she was very driven to publish, scientific articles and show progress in her research and all of that until she had her stroke, and then she was living primarily in her right brain most of the time and couldn't even speak. But as she got well, and she did decide to get well, that to reinstate those neurons in her left brain. But what she learned by doing this is that most of her activity was from the upper left cognitive brain. That was her pusher. That's what pushed her all to achieve more. And then she started living all in the right brain, which is the playful, fun part in the bottom and the spiritual part in the top. And coming back to activate the left brain was actually a sacrifice, because this was bliss and this was fun. And so what she does now, she says, is she uses her left brain cognitive, her to-do list and what she must get done, but she spends most of the rest of her time that she can in being playful and being creative, being an artist. She does stained glass artworks, and she spends as much time in nature as she can, and she only leaves that part to go do what she has to get done. And I think that's a great way of taking care of yourself, to allow yourself to play, to be creative, to enjoy your spiritual practices, because that's what nurtures us. That's what nurtures us.
So you're really talking about a balancing act, and having to
so.
balance the evaluator against the doer, the being present. And unfortunately, that evaluator is just so powerful and on most of the time for most of us. Even in the middle of our most joyous experience, we can be thinking, am I doing this right? How long is this going to last? What am I supposed to do when this is over? And I think that's one of the reasons we practice escapism, is because we're trying to escape the evaluator. But another way to do that is to play more, is to jump in to and have fun with whatever the condition or situation or circumstance is, if you can do that.
Well, and when I think of the term evolution of self-care, most of our evolution has, we didn't have the luxury to do all these things for ourselves. We were in survival mode, and you were working or running or,
Yeah.
running from wild animals in our early days or whatever. You didn't have time to think, well, how shall I take care of this wonderful, beautiful self that I am? It was more like, how do I survive and keep my family surviving?
Yeah.
So I think that's why we're evolving into looking at how can I have the very best life possible.
As opposed to, how can I have a life with more things that I can do and that need to get done because I'm smart and because I have tools and because I have stuff. And I think we can overwhelm ourselves with everything we have that's supposed to help us make life simple. And in fact, it would be helpful if we could simplify whenever possible, whatever can be simplified, so that we don't spend as much time looking at it and saying, do I need to do more? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Why didn't I get that done? And so the evolution of self-care, I'd like us all to think about how we can evolve our self-care in a way that allows us to care better, care more with more aliveness, not as a job, but as something that we're looking forward to, something we can do because it feels good.
And I thought, just thinking of my own family, sometimes the men in our lives make sure that they have the fun things that they like to do, whether it's sports or flying airplanes or various things like that. And I really want, and women do too, they have their yoga classes and exercise classes and things, but this is something that we need to consider for our own wholeness and well-being. And I think it's a new thing. I don't think my mother ever thought about how do I, maintain myself in the best way possible. But it is wonderful to think that we are the beloved of God. We are beloved. We are loved. And if the way I feel about my own children is I want them to have the best life they can. I don't want them to overwork. I don't want them to underwork. I don't want them to stress and strive. I want them to enjoy life, and I think that's what Spirit wants for us. We are Spirit incarnate, and I think Spirit, God, wants to enjoy itself by means of us. So I often ask myself, am I showing God a good time lately or not, because God expresses itself through me. All of that is important. And I think we can lose track of it as we get older, because so many of the fun things you used to do you can't do anymore.
Or we managed to take the fun out of what we do because we made it something, well, I've already done that. Or I shouldn't show too much of myself doing that. I should be careful. I should be thoughtful. I was watching a YouTube video the other day of a baby and a puppy, and the puppy would lick the baby's face, and every time the puppy would lick the baby's face, the baby would break out in laughter and just laugh and laugh and laugh. And I thought, when was the last time I laughed? When was the last time I let myself, and I didn't want Judith to start licking me. That's not a good idea. But, how often do we let ourselves really laugh? To really connect with what is funny and going on, and so I think the evolution should include, more than anything else, a willingness to not take ourselves so seriously and to give ourselves a break and to be nice to ourselves because we can be, and we'll worry about getting it right later.
Matthew Fox
Love Matthew Fox.
is a wonderful. Can't think of the word that I want to use.
Theologian.
Well, yes, he is a theologian and a scholar, and he was a Catholic priest, and he left the priesthood, but he kept his own teaching, and this is what he says about self-care. It's from his book, The Coming of the Cosmic Christ. He says, one must let go of internalized oppression, internalized oppression, and dare to see oneself again as an image of God, as an original blessing, as a co-creator with divinity. Self-love is a rare and radical kind of love because it requires a trust of our right to be here and of the universe's love of us. So, but he knows the importance of practicing that self-love. And we must let go of the internalized oppression. See, I think these are all new concepts for us as a human race. As a human race, these are new concepts, and it involves a new decision about how to care for ourselves. I was saying that some of the things we can't do anymore. I was so surprised the last time I went snow skiing to find out that I shouldn't ski anymore. Because I had trouble picking myself up when I fell in the snow. And I thought, I guess I can't ski anymore. This was such a surprise. So a lot of the fun things that we're used to doing as we get older, sometimes we cannot continue doing them. But we have to find other things that bring us joy, bring us balance, allow us to self-love and self-care.
It's interesting. We can't walk as far or as long as we used to walk, but in this last year, I think we've watched more travel logs of Europe and Asia and the rest of the world than I've ever seen before, and I know more about the geography of the world than I ever knew before. And I guess I have a couple of choices. I could say, God, I wish we could do that. Or I guess I could say, I'm really so grateful that I get to do that I get to watch it and participate in it and see it. And at the end of the day, I'm not actually tired, and I didn't have to pay any port taxes or any of those things to do what I'm doing. Yeah. But I think to interpret it not as loss but as gain, to interpret it as possibility rather than as loss. Whenever we can, if we can see the situation we're in a way that allows us to be free in that situation, that's really good. I work, one of my jobs is I work in a psychiatric unit where it's people are hospitalized often for a month or two against their will because they're actually in the middle of a psychotic episode and they can't be out in the community. So it's really, really restrictive and really limiting. One of the clients I was working with said, I can't believe I have to be here. I said, well, what are you doing while you're here? She said, well, I'm just going to sit here until I get discharged. And I said, well, let's change this a little. Why don't you pretend that you're an international airport and that the people here are all international travelers and you're waiting for your plane, and when your plane comes, you're going to go to a wonderful place wherever you'd like to go. She said, okay. And then what do I do in between? I said, well, you could sit on the table and we could color some pictures. We could draw something. We could do something while you're waiting for your flight. And she said, that's a really great idea. So she sat for a few more minutes and lamented being hospitalized and then came over to the table. About an hour later, she said, I didn't know how much I love coloring. You see, we have to take ourselves off pout and put ourselves in motion and say, how can I make this the best experience possible? And I think very often, we are having a kind of mental pout that life hasn't gone well enough for us or isn't going as well as we'd like it to. And we're going to pout until God says, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see your pain, let me stop this. And the truth is, we have to stop it. We have to change it. We have to decide to play. I can't think of his name, but it'll come to me, and you'll probably think of it for me. He was on an airplane, and he decided it was time for a party. So he told everybody that it was party time, and got the stewardesses or the flight attendants.
That was Dr. Love, Leo Buscaglia.
Buscaglia. He made the flight a party. Everybody had something to contribute, but they had to decide that it was a party, not a flight. And once they decided that it was a flight, they started having a party. They started having fun. And but it was just really interesting to see how that worked.
The reason they called him Leo, Dr. Love, and the reason that he started doing things like that is he was a professor, I think in Berkeley, Northern
I think so.
California.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he taught, but he noticed at one point that a student who had been up front was no longer attending. And he inquired to see what was going on with that woman, and as it turned out, he learned she had committed suicide during his semester. And he was so devastated because he kept wondering if he could have done anything, if he could have done anything different to make her feel loved and valuable enough to want to stay. And so he made it his business to overtly love everyone, even if people thought he was silly. So that's why he would do something as bold as step in an airplane and say, let's have a party. Because he wanted to love people and have them enjoy life.
He was also realizing that none of us is going to be here as long as we actually maybe even had thought of being here. And if we're not going to be here forever, this isn't a permanent gig. We need to engage as best we can with every situation and every circumstance that presents itself. I think we've reached the point in time where we need to end with a closing treatment, if you'll do that.
I was going to ask you to do that.
Oh, okay, well then let's just have some more fun. Yes. I won't ask us to gather together because we are together. I won't ask us to reach deep into our heart and soul because our hearts and souls are open and we've decided to have them be open to the experience of full and dynamic, powerful, extraordinary living. What we're saying right here and right now is my heart, my body, my mind, my whole being is alive and well and ready to play. I'm going to play now in ways I've never played before, and I'm going to play so well and so wonderfully and so joyfully that others are going to want to join me as well. And those who are embarrassed by my play or that don't want to play, they'll fall aside and allow those who do want to join me until this is a chorus of playfulness, a chorus of joy, a chorus of self-care. So we say yes to self-care. We say yes to loving oneself. We say yes to looking in the mirror and smiling until we can feel it in our hearts as well. Knowing this to be true, knowing that I've spoken the truth, we say yes and we say thank you, and together we say, and so it is.
See, I wanted you to do that to show off how terrific you are at it.
Thank you.
So we're going to now
do a screen share. Wrong one, yeah. There we go.
Is ask you to consider how you circulate your good in the world, what you support, and we certainly invite you to support this organization, the Center for Spiritual Living of the Palm Beaches, by doing an offering right now, and do an offertory affirmation. And so the affirmation is, my investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And so it is. And so I just want to point out that the way that they do an offering is go to this website, cslpalmbeaches.org, and there's a button that says Ways to Donate at the top. Click on that, and it will show you different ways that you can support the organization, and we thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to stop recording.